Right. Well, it is 7:30, so we will begin. I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to join me today for Yoga Beyond the Mat webinar, and I hope to offer you all a little insight into the roadmap to living a more peaceful, a more truthful, and joy-filled life. I have a lot of information to share with you today that probably doesn't come as a surprise to some of you. So you may want to have a pen and paper handy just to take a few notes. And if you're new to attending webinars, then just so you know, I am recording this so that if you feel like you want to come back to and refer back to it for more information, then you can do that. I'll be sending out the recording at a later date, probably tomorrow. And also feel free to get up and stretch if you are feeling a little stiff and a little overwhelmed with how much information might be coming at you. So you're also welcome to move about freely for that. And the information that I'm going to share in this webinar will offer you many tools to start implementing into your day-to-day life to increase your awareness and offer you a chance to take your yoga off the mat. It might also inspire you to go a little bit deeper and to practice and discover more about these principles, in which you may want to consider my year-long deep dive course, which I'm hoping to share a little bit about that at the end of this webinar as well. So just know that whether you're a person who's ready to commit to something more deeper, or if you're somebody who's just starting off, the webinar today is going to offer you a lot of tools that you can start with right away and put into practice. Also, before I begin, I just want to mention that what I'm teaching here is based on my own experiences with integrating yoga into my own life. And everything that I teach is from my own interpretation of yoga philosophy. I'm just going to switch to sharing my screen with you here so that you can follow along. And okay. Sorry, give me a second here. All right, so welcome again to Beyond the Mat, talking about the yoga Beyond the Mat, Yamas and Niyamas. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a ERYT 500 certified yoga and hatha, both hatha and Kundalini yoga. So that might mean something to somebody, some of you, but nothing to others. So that just basically means that I've had a lot of training, and I'm a continuing education credit provider through Yoga Alliance. I'm owner and operator of Yoga for All Studio and Yoga for All Online. I'm the author of Everyday Gratitude and the Thankful Thursday blog. I bring with me over 15 years of teaching experience and over 2,000 training hours. So I've offered yoga teacher trainings, and I've mentored many yoga teachers one-on-one, and I have a passion for supporting other yogis such as yourself in finding their authentic voice and living their yoga as much off of their mat as on their mat. So I live in Northern Ontario, and I am married with 5 children, adult children that is, and I have 1 grandchild on the way, which I am pretty excited about. So I live in, I've spent 33 years of working as an early childhood educator, and I've run various daycare centers, support groups, I've facilitated retreats, women's groups, and learning seminars. So that's just a little bit about me, just to show you some of the experience that I bring to this webinar. And our breakdown for today's webinar, I'm going to talk a little bit about yoga here in the West. I'm going to review the base in which yoga in the West has been built and where it's come from. And we'll cover each step of the path of yoga and discuss the importance of taking yoga off the mat and how to integrate that into your day-to-day life. I'll be explaining the role of the mind throughout this process and how it functions in support and or how it hinders our practice. And following that, I will guide you through a meditation that will give you an opportunity to set some goals for yourself and recognize some of your obstacles. And then hopefully I can share a little bit about the year-long deep dive with the Yamas and Niyamas and answer any of your questions that you might have at the end. So if you can save your questions to the very end, that I would appreciate that. And again, I just want to review that what I teach comes from my own studies of various writings, courses, and from my own practice and applications of those teachings within my own life. So here in the West, yoga in the West. Most of the people here in the West think of yoga as postures that we do in a class and on a mat. And yoga is one of the fastest growing forms of exercise and has a long list of benefits that bring people to the mat and to the practice for a large variety of reasons. And I know for myself, I started yoga because I was working out at the gym and I was concerned about losing my flexibility, and I wanted to make sure that I kept that flexibility and helped to stretch out those muscles that I was working at the gym. And so as I dove into my own yoga practice, I started to feel the benefits of it. I started to feel more calm. I started to have more patience, and I noticed that I had more energy. And something that just awoke in me that really called me to learn more about why I was feeling so good and how I can get more of that feel-good stuff. So as we begin, we're going to start with the word yoga. So words, I like to start with the word because words hold a vibration or a frequency that carries with it an essence that is often more clear than our logical minds would think that it is. So for example, when I think of the word yoga, right away the first thing that in my mind is a posture. I visualize somebody in a pose or stretching. However, when we take a look at the meaning of the word, we can see that there's more depth. The word yoga comes from a Sanskrit word to yoke, which means to unite, and it refers to uniting the body, the mind, and the spirit. So often in the West, we tend to put a lot of emphasis on the importance of our physical body. So we put a lot of thought into how we're going to dress, what we're going to eat, how we're going to exercise, are we getting enough sleep? So we focus in a lot about our physical body. And just more recently, we've started to become more concerned about our mental health and our emotional health. And few people are really concerned about their spiritual health. So yoga really is meant to embrace each of those pieces, the body, the mind, and the spirit, and embracing all of who we are. So regardless of your background, your religious beliefs, your gender, your age, your cultural influence, in yoga, we recognize that we are more than the mind, we are more than our body, and we have an essence that has existed before we were born, and it will exist after we die. So the roadmap of yoga guides us to live in the place of balance in all of these areas so that we can experience our full essence of self. So let me explain it this way. So if we only focus on our physical body, then we may suffer mentally or emotionally. If we only concentrate on our spiritual self, then we miss out on all the pleasures this world has for us. So we really need balance in all of those areas. And we can think of it also as the chair analogy. I really like this chair analogy. It has 4 legs, and each of these legs represent an aspect of self. So we have our physical self, our mental self, our spirit, our emotional self, and our spiritual self. If we take one of those legs away, then we can manage to balance on 3 legs, but after a while, it's going to become challenging. And the same with life. If we only have the awareness of our health in body and mind, then we can manage just fine, probably for quite some time. but eventually life becomes empty. Now, if we take away two of those legs, let's say you're taking care of your spiritual self and your mental self, but you're ignoring many of your emotions and you're not really addressing any of your physical needs, then you're going to really just topple over. In yoga, we're given a roadmap to living our full potential, to self-realization, or some people like to call it enlightenment. And there's many different texts that you can study in yoga that can help to guide you through the living in balance in all of these areas. But the one we're going to focus on today is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, specifically within them, the 8 limbs of yoga. So again, we want to take a look first at the word and know what the word sutra means. So before we dive into sutras, we want to know what sutras are. And a sutra is literally a rule or an aphorism or a collection of them. And in Sanskrit, sutra means thread. So a traditional ancient sutra attempts to weave knowledge thread-like around and into a few simple words or syllables. So we can think of a sutra as something that carries with it knowledge or wisdom through time and space. So regardless of where you are in time, whenever you read that sutra, the reader should be able to receive that knowledge and wisdom from the sutra because it's implanted on that thread. So that's what a sutra is. So now we're taking a look at Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So who is Patanjali? Well, there are a few different theories about who Patanjali is, and one of them is being that he was a sage that thought to be the author of the Sanskrit works, many of the Sanskrit works, the greatest of them being the Yoga Sutras. And the other thought is that there were several authors that wrote under the same name as Patanjali. So regardless of if Patanjali was a single person or a group of authors, basically Patanjali at that time, it was roughly between 2 and 5 BCE, gathered up everything that was yoga at that time and laid them out into this roadmap towards self-liberation. And it consists of 196 sutras or aphorisms on yoga and carrying that knowledge that serves to awaken the reader. And when practiced, then it transcends all the suffering and stops that unconscious actions that create a lot of our problems. So the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are really a formula that is really the foundation of what classical yoga is here in the West today. And it's known also as the 8 limbs of yoga. The 8 limbs of yoga, we have the Yamas, which I'm just going to go through them all here and describe them here. So we have the Yamas, which are 5 restraints or observances. The Niyamas, 5 disciplines. Asana, postures for health and meditation. Those are what most people see today. Then there's pranayama, the control of breath, or prana, life force. And many people are familiar with pranayama as well. So it's the control of the expansion and retention of the breath. Pratyahara is a synchronization of the senses and thoughts. So this is more than just closing your eyes and kind of tuning out what's outside of you. It's about drawing all of the senses and awareness inward into your own personal self, so we can tune into what's happening within our own being. And then there's dharana, which is that one pointed concentration. So it could be on anything. It could be the tip of the nose, the tip of the tongue. It could be your third eye. It could be a candle or a flower. So anything that you draw your full concentration to. Then dhyana, which is deep meditation. And then there's samadhi, which is awakening and absorption into spirit. So that's complete integration. So you can see here that there's really many other pieces and aspects of yoga than what is typically taught in a regular class. Most people think of yoga again as postures and breath work. And while practicing those 2 limbs are are really important, and they help to keep the physical body strong and flexible. There's so much more that a person can experience when we include all 8 limbs of yoga. And when we list them here, like this, it kind of looks like a menu. And in our Western mind, we like to pick and choose off of the menu those things that suit our specific needs, whatever we're most comfortable with. When we work and dive into some of these limbs, many of them can really challenge us, our stories, our beliefs, and the patterns that we fall into. So it challenges those things. So they're not as comfortable to work with as some of the other ones, like the asana and the pranayama. So I'm just going to take these, if you can look at these, the yamas is the first one, then we move down to the 8th one, and I'm going to reverse them. So just to kind of demonstrate a concept here. So here I've moved the yamas and the niyamas down to the bottom. And by doing this, it kind of creates like a ladder with a progression upwards. So the yamas and niyamas now form the base, the foundation of the 8 limbs. And Patanjali specifically made the yamas and the niyamas the first and the second ones because he really believed that they were the most important. They were the things that created the depth to the rest of the practices. And it's thought in the yoga world that if you wanted to, a couple hundred years ago, if you wanted to study yoga, you had to master the yamas and niyamas first before giving any postures or any breath work. And so that's how important they were. When we practice all of the 8 limbs, then we really get the full spectrum. When we look at them like this, so the first way we looked at them like a menu, and our mind wants to pick and choose those things that we're most comfortable with. And when we look at them this way, like a ladder, it makes us feel, the mind think that this is a progression. So we start at the bottom and we work our way up. And the ego likes to think, oh, I've reached samadhi, I'm now enlightened. I do not need to practice anymore. But in reality, what we need to know is each of the 8 limbs creates the full spectrum of yoga, and we need a continuous practice of all 8 limbs. So in order to maintain the level of consciousness that we create as we move through them, we need to practice them all the time. It's a lifelong journey. As we continue to practice them, we continue to unfold and become more and more aware and more conscious. So I know I'm going through this quickly, but I do have a lot that I want to share with you. And because the yamas and niyamas are so important, and they're the 2 limbs that tend to get the most ignored, I really want to spend some time talking about those 2 limbs. And this is the juicy part of this webinar, where you can take these pieces and start to work on them right away to taking your yoga off of the mat. So here we have the yamas, and the yamas they make up the moral restraints in our external relationships. So they're kind of considered more of the don'ts. So we have ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. Ahimsa. So ahimsa non-violence is the practice. It includes mental, physical, and emotional violence towards ourselves and towards other people. And most people think, well, I'm not really a violent person, so this one is pretty easy. But when we really start to work with this, we see that we create violence within our own reactions to events and to other people. So we create violence in our habits, through our judgments, through our criticism, in our anger, in our irritations. And so when we start to work with that, we start to see these thoughts and these words that come out that create harm that we were not aware of before. And I find that when we practice ahimsa, it's also important to practice at the same time compassion. When we practice compassion, then we allow compassion to kind of comfort us as we catch ourselves doing violence to other people. And we can let go of all the reactions to our situations, and we can replace some of those negative thoughts with feelings of kindness and acceptance and love. So it's kind of a contradiction. We can catch ourselves in a contradiction. You know, we can get frustrated with ourselves. We can think, oh, I'm practicing nonviolence, and then we catch ourselves with nonviolence, and then we have violent thoughts about ourselves, and then we have to have compassion, and then there's compassion for the compassion. So it's kind of this funny contradiction between itself. But ahimsa is the first one and the most important, and we need to keep it in mind when we move through all the other yamas and niyamas. So the second one is Satya, in truthfulness, and it urges us to live and speak our truth at all times. So walking the path of truth can be a really tough one, especially when we're practicing ahimsa, because when we are practicing truthfulness, we also have to be in mind, if I'm speaking my truth, what I'm saying going to harm and hinder, or is it going to uplift and elevate? And so those are really important questions to ask yourself before you speak. And we want to practice our truthfulness in our thoughts as well as in our words and in our actions. So living in truth not only creates respect and honor and integrity, but it also provides us with a vision to clearly see the higher truths of our yogic path. Then we have asteya, which is non-stealing, and that seems pretty clear. However, to best define this, it really means not taking that which is not freely given. So I'll say that again, not taking what is not freely given. And while this on the surface seems super easy to accomplish, when we look at it further, this yama can be quite challenging to practice. So on a personal level, when we practice asteya, it entails not committing theft or not allowing other people to commit theft. So if you know somebody who's committing theft, you want to be able to encourage them not to, or not support them in that. And on a level of society, asteya would be in opposition to exploitation, social injustice, and oppression. Asteya encourages generosity, and it helps us to overcome our own greed. Patanjali tells us when asteya is firmly established in a yogi, then all the jewels will become present to him or her. Brahmacharya, chastity, continence, non-waste of energy, and it states that when we have control over our physical impulses of excess, then we attain knowledge, vigor, and increase our own energy. So really, this one is about breaking the bonds that attach us to all the excesses in our addictions. And this is going to take a lot of courage and a lot of will. And each time we overcome these impulses of excess, we become stronger, we become healthier, and we become wiser. So this can be one of the simplest ways and methods of achieving balance when we practice brahmacharya. So really, it's about creating moderation in all of the activities. So practicing moderation in the way of conserving our energy, which can then be applied to some of our own spiritual practices. And then a aparigraha, so this is the fifth one, non-hoarding or non-coveting, and it urges us to let go of everything that we don't need. So possessing really only the things that are necessary. And the yogis tell us that worldly objects cannot really be possessed at all. so that they're just really something that is temporary and it's always changing. So rather than getting attached to something that will just can disappear any moment, we want to be able to let go of those attachments. When we become greedy, we lose the ability to see our own eternal possession. So that's the Atman, or our true self. And when we cling to what we have, then we lose the ability to open up to receiving what it is that we need. And so those are the five yamas. And when simply just by starting to contemplate these concepts, we start to practice them. And when we practice the yamas, we're really striving towards living a healthier, holier, and more peaceful life. And at the same time, we strengthen our powers of awareness, of will, and of discernment. The more we cultivate consciousness, conscious and skillful action, the easier it'll be to navigate strong emotions and those negative thought patterns that come up in the mind. And we're much less likely to act from those unconscious programming. So this is where our unconscious mind, from the programming from our childhood, our parents, our teachers, our friends, those things that we've learned to believe about ourselves, can impact us unconsciously. And when we work with the yamas, we get to explore those stories and those beliefs and those patterns that we've had that have prevented us from really living fully in all areas of our life. And now we'll move on to the Niyamas. Hopefully I'm not losing you or you're not falling asleep. The Niyamas deal with observing our daily practices, and they're geared to our internal relationships to the self. So I like to think of this one as the way we treat ourselves when nobody else is watching. So we have Satya, Santosha, Tapas, Svedayaya, and Ishvara Pranadhana. And these are quite the tongue twisters. So just as with the yamas, Patanjali explains how and why each of the niyamas really help in our personal growth. So the second limb, or the niyamas, the second limb of Patanjali's, contains these five internal practices or observances. And they really expand on the practice of the yamas. So they're like an extension of the first limb. Satya is purification. And it's the central aim of most of the yoga practices is cleanliness and purity. And the yogis discovered that impurities in both of our external environment and our internal body adversely affect the state of our mind, and they prevent us from attaining our real wisdom and our spiritual liberation. So I don't know about you, but I've had that moment where I've had that one extra cup of coffee, and I've felt the impact on my mind, my ability to not be able to concentrate, or that scattered energy, or I've had too much sugar and I felt like that drop of energy. So this is Satya. This is about being aware of what it is that we put into our body and how it impacts our mind and our practice and our pure state of being. So we really work to consciously be aware of our surroundings, of ourselves, in our environment. So this is our food, this is our drink, our friends, our entertainment, this is our furnishings, and our transportation. So all of these things add to our external impurities, and the more we're aware of that, the less impact they'll have on as we bring them into our body. So we want to be aware of all of those things. And then there's Santosha, which is contentment. And contentment is not craving for what we don't have, as well as not coveting the possessions of other people. And the yogis tell us that when we are perfectly content with all that we have, all that life gives us, then we can attain real, true joy and happiness. So it is easy for the mind to become fooled into thinking that we really need this or we really need that. And those things that we think that we want or need can provide a happiness, but it's a temporary happiness. And I've had that. I've had this experience myself where I was sure that to be happy, that's what I needed in my life. And only to get that and realize, no, that's not what it is. So Santosha is about contentment. It's practicing this really frees us up from all of that unnecessary suffering of always wanting things to be different. And instead it fills us with gratitude and joy for all of life's blessings. Then we have the third niyama, which is tapas. Tapas is our dedication to our practice. And it's intense self-discipline and it's attainment of willpower. So basically tapas is doing something that you don't want to do that will have a positive effect. So I think right away when I think of this, I think of my yoga practice. So my daily sadhana, getting up every morning to do the practice. I don't always meet that with joy, but I know that if I do my practice, I'm going to feel better. And so I do it anyways. Tapas is that peace within yourself, that willpower within yourself, or that fire within yourself that draws you to your mat to get you there so that you do those things that you know you need and that will make you feel better. So that's tapas. Yes, tapas is what helps us to have control over some of those unconscious impulses that we have or our poor behaviors. And then svadhyaya is self-study. And self-study is the ability to see our true divine nature through the contemplation of our life lessons, and it's through our meditation. We can gain self-study through sacred scriptures. I often like to have a variety of sacred books to open up after my meditation. I just like to take it off the shelf, open it up, and read whatever passage is in front of me. And more often than not, I would say 95% of the time, it's really relevant to what I needed to hear in that moment. And so in yoga, there's lots of books. There's the Bhagavad Gita, there's the Upanishads, there's, of course, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there's the Hatha Pradipika. There's many, if you're Christian, there's the Bible, there's the Tao. There's so many sacred scriptures that we can benefit from that the list is quite endless, actually. So it's nice to get a few of those books to take a look at. But when we examine our actions and our behaviors and study ourselves, we become the mirror. So we get to see with our own consciousness our unconscious motives, our thoughts, our desires much more clearly. And then the last one is Ishvara Pranadhana, quite a mouthful, surrendering to the divine. This is devotion, it's dedication, it's surrendering to a higher power. So whatever that is to you. So it could be, how do I say this? It could be simply just reminding yourself of that connection to something greater than who you are, or that endless, infinite part of yourself. And when we can completely surrender to the divine, then our practice becomes sacred and it becomes filled with grace. We become filled with inner peace and this abounding love. The foundation limbs of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the Yamas and Niyamas, really create, you can see here, it creates a foundation and a strong container for any person who follows them to move into the deeper stages of yoga with a lot of focus, inner strength, and success. And practicing the Yamas and the Niyamas is a journey and a process. So we really need to let everything work together. Here we can see the body, the mind, and the spirit. Everything works together. And by practicing the Yamas and Niyamas as a lifelong practice, then we become much more filled with peace and joy and happiness. We can live authentically and real, so we really lose the bounds of the physical world. So we're not caught up in all the drama that's around us. And right now there is a lot of drama around us, and it's so easy to get caught up in it. When we live from this place and this understanding, this higher understanding of who you are within all of that, the drama isn't so overwhelming, and you can see yourself more clearly. So we need yoga. In yoga, we need all the parts of ourselves to work together to experience our fullness of a human being, just like the well-oiled gears. And they need tending to, and they need work every single day. And how are we doing for time here? Okay. So that was a lot of information. Take a stretch. Stand up if you need to. Take a few deep breaths. Just let all of that information sink in. Make sure you write down your questions if you have them. And I'm going to move into guiding you into a meditation now. So I want you to get comfortable. So whether you're sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor, and close your eyes. And close your eyes. Just let yourself be. If you're sitting in a chair, feel your feet flat on the floor. And just allow all that information to sink in. And now as you're sitting, the eyes closed, focus between your eyebrows. And begin to sip your breath in through your curled lips, as though you're sipping through a straw. A long, slow, smooth inhale through the curled lips, and then exhale through the nose, slowly and completely. As you continue to breathe, begin to visualize yourself in the future. What are your goals? What are your dreams? Where are you headed? Continue with sipping the breath in through the curled lips, slowly and deeply. Exhale through the nose, slowly and completely. Feel the shoulders relax, the forehead soften. You're bringing into your mind that which you are becoming. Now continue this same breath pattern. This time you're going to inhale through the lips, hold your breath in, and bring up in your mind any pattern or any block, any negativity that comes up in the mind towards achieving your goal. And then bring it down to zero. Imagine it dissolving right in your mind. When you need to, close your mouth, exhale through the nose. You're inhaling through the curled lips, holding the breath in, visualizing your problem. Bring it down to zero, imagine it dissolving. And then when you need to, exhale through the nose. So my problem is zero. My pain is zero. Anything that's in your way, dissolve it to nothing. On your next inhalation, breathe in through the curled lips. Hold your breath in and bring whatever you're trying to create for yourself into one word. Could be health, prosperity, love, whatever it is, peace. See the word clearly, bring it into one word. As you exhale, imagine that you're beaming it out from your third eye into the universe. Breathing in through the curled lips. Hold the breath in. Bring whatever you're creating into one word. See it clearly. Beam it out. And take one more breath in. Hold it in. See your word clearly. Exhale and beam it out. With your eyes closed, inhale, stretch your arms all the way up. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Bend a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. Exhale, inhale, take a deep breath in. Keep stretching, exhale. Inhale deeply one more time. Hold the breath in, shake your arms. And then exhale, gently relax. I hope you enjoyed that practice. It's one of my favorite meditations to do when I'm working on creating a vision for myself in the future. I get to work through a lot of those blocks and see them dissolving in front of me. So the Yamas and the Niyamas are really a roadmap. I truly believe they're the roadmap to taking your yoga off the mat and integrating it into your day so that you can really live a truthful and authentic, peaceful life. And I believe for a long time I just had a physical practice, and it wasn't until I started practicing the Yamas and the Niyamas that my physical practice became much more richer. And it was because taking the Yamas and the Niyamas and integrating them into my life and understanding the thought patterns that I have gave me that deeper relationship with my mind, so that when I was engaging in my physical practice, then I can feel and listen deeply to the wisdom that I carry within my own physical body. And so my asanas now became more informative. My breath became more connected. And when I moved into meditation, I could actually hear more clearly my own authentic voice. So I moved through a lot of that chitter chatter of the mind and the ego, and I can hear the clear message that how I needed to move forward throughout my day. And so I wanted to share a little bit. First, if you just practice the yamas and niyamas, you start contemplating them, you start integrating them into day-to-day life. The information you learn today is enough to get you on the roll, on starting your deeper practice. If you're really interested in moving deeper, I am offering a year-long practice with the yamas and niyamas, and it dedicates one whole month to each yama and each niyama. So you get different perspectives, you can see different angles of the concepts. Each week is a different concept to integrate into your daily life. So the beginning of the month and the beginning of the month of each yama and niyama, there's a video practice where you can engage in a physical practice. And then each week is a concept that you get to integrate and observe yourself and your thoughts and see what comes up emotionally, what challenges you spiritually. There's some journaling, there's monthly meetings where we get to gather together and discuss these concepts and the things that have come up for us, as well as working on some different group projects together. And each week there will be an accountability meeting so that you stay on track, because some of my experience in offering these programs is sometimes people kind of get off track and they kind of move away, especially when they're really challenged, especially when they feel uncomfortable. We don't like to feel uncomfortable. Typically, as human beings, we find the comfort zone. And so this is a challenge to step into your uncomfortable parts and in a supportive environment where you can really take a look at them. And it's really designed that you can take it as deep as you want to go. Some people, they like to just skim the surface and have the observing in the background, and they take the course over and over again so that each time they go a little bit deeper. And then some people just love to dive right in, and they really stay dedicated through the whole year. So really it's designed to work at your own pace and have that support in the background. So that is coming up, and it is starting in September. And I'm offering a discount, a 10% discount until the end of this week, just for you people that have attended my webinar. So I'm offering that to you, and I'll send some reminders out about that, give you some time to think about it. And if you have any questions about this program or anything that I talked about today that you don't feel comfortable even asking today, then feel free to reach out to me, because I love questions, and I'll certainly be here to support you in any way that I can. So I do want to open up for questions. If anybody does have some, then you can either type it in or ask. If you want to type it into the message there, then I will do my best to answer any question. Anybody? I tried to cover the base of where the Yamas and Niyamas came from, and a little bit about the history, as well as the concepts pretty thoroughly. So if there was something that you wanted me to expand on a little bit more, then feel free to ask. Well, I'm pretty happy that there's no questions. I must have done a good job at explaining them. All right. Well, again, you can always reach out and send me a personal message or give me a phone call if you want to to ask me more about the Yamas and the Niyamas, or about my upcoming course. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and good luck integrating some of these little concepts. I've already planted the seed. Now you can start observing yourself as you move through your day. So thanks for joining me for Beyond the Mat webinar. And I hope to see you all soon. Namaste.